Bonjour petit pois, c'est Shaaba. Welcome back to another week, another Tuesday, another video. Today I have a thought of the day, a brain fart, if you will. And this came about because somebody I used to follow on Twitter tweeted this. And I was like, hold up, I like South Asian representation, I like Priyanka Chopra, I like Lily Singh. What is wrong? What happened? And what I found sparked a whole conversation about culture appropriation versus culture appreciation and the differences between the two. What is appropriation and what is appreciation and what did Lily do? We will talk about all of that in just a minute, but before I do, one thing that is certainly appreciation is learning culture through learning different languages, and I wanted to thank Busuu as today's video sponsor. Now you know, especially if you've joined us on our live streams, just how obsessed I've been with language learning apps, and also how much I've enjoyed learning Spanish, even though I'm not very good at it. And Busuu here is absolutely free for you to sign up to. It also has a premium paid feature for master access for all of the features, and I am one of over 100 million Busuu community users. Busuu can help you learn up to 12 languages, including English, hello, French, bonjour, Spanish, hola, Italian, buongiorno, and many more. Yo aprendo a hablar español ahora. I'm trying, I'm getting there. I also really love that you can connect with native speakers, real actual people with real actual challenges that you can get feedback from people all over the world. Like Alex here, who was tasked with saying his name and introducing himself in English.
Hi, my name is Alex. I'm from Russia.
5 stars for Alex! If you fancy giving Busuu Premium a go and unlocking all of the features, you can use my link downstairs in the description box to download Busuu and get your 7-day free trial. Que divertida! Now back to the video. So it turns out that people are mad at Lily Singh and consider her a bad ambassador or representation, whatever, of South Asian culture because of cultural appropriation, because of how much she likes Trinidad. I used to watch her vlogs, and she definitely loves cultures that aren't her own. I've seen her travel there, I've seen her wear clothes, you know, like that seem quite native to that culture. She listens to the music, she dances. And honestly, I just couldn't understand why people found that offensive. Cue a very long conversation with Jamie and hours of googling the differences between cultural appropriation and cultural appreciation, and to be very honest, I still don't quite understand why everybody's getting so upset over Lily Singh. I'm making it sound like a huge controversy. It's not like she was trending in the news. It was just based on that one tweet, and I saw a few comments. And so I wanted to talk through a few examples of cultural appropriation and cultural appreciation and see what you think. As always, hello, we did. As always, my sweet peas, I would love to hear what you think. Please feel free, it looks like I've got a tail, to pop a comment downstairs and let me know your thoughts. So cultural appropriation is defined as someone from a majority group taking something from a minority group and using it in mainstream culture. Lots of people equate it to stealing culture, and yeah, I see why. I can see why, actually. That's what cultural appropriation is. You're stealing something that doesn't belong to you, it belongs to a smaller group than you, and then you're like, ooh, this is cool. Aren't I cool? So why is that bad? Well, I think first and foremost, it almost trivializes culture, and it puts certain people from that culture in a box. Take St. Patrick's Day, for example. That's in one of the articles that I read. Some Irish people really hate the fact that it's been appropriated, and that Irish people are therefore labelled entirely as horrific drunkards, which is clearly not the case. Now, I don't know what the actual origin of St. Patrick's Day is. That's probably the whole point and why it shouldn't be appropriated in the first place. Appropriation also disregards the oppression and the history that's often quite painful for minority groups. Pain that has very frequently come from the hands of the cis white man, and it poops on them, right? But it goes a little bit further than just pooping on them. It's like it takes that poop and it rubs it in their faces. Because when a white person wears cornrows or a sari, for example, it's considered cool. People go, ah, how exotic, how beautiful. But for the years and years and years beforehand, black people have worn cornrows in their hair for practical and cultural reasons. Brown people have been wearing saris for cultural reasons. And yet when a white person does it, it seems cool, and when a brown person does it, we get told we smell like curry in the playground. One article actually likened it to you taking a test and getting an F, and then someone else copying all of your exact same answers and getting an A. That's not fair. That's the problem. That's what cultural appropriation is. Not cheating on a test, but you know what I mean. It's just something that's not cool when a person of minority does it, but then becomes very cool when a person of privilege does it. That's it. That's it. So does this mean that we can't wear rainbows or saris or cornrows now? I personally don't think that's what it means, but a lot of people disagree with me, and I think that's where cultural appreciation comes in. Now, cultural appreciation, as opposed to appropriation, is defined as honouring the art and the culture that comes from a background that's different to yours by taking the time to learn about it and listen to people from that culture talk about it and interact with something that's different to your own. It's cultural exchange, it's mutual respect, that kind of thing. And that sounds great. In principle, it really does, but what about in practice? Can someone who's not South Asian wear a sari to a party just because? Can you post a photo of yourself on Instagram going to India and enjoying your time at Holi festival? Can people wear henna to a festival like Glastonbury? Or, you know, dress as a red Indian for Halloween? I really don't mean to offend anyone, this is just my brain fart videos. I'm talking through it and I hope that I can gain some clarity. But if you disagree with me or think that there's a point that needs to be added, please do let me know. But really, for me, it seems to be that the biggest difference between cultural appropriation and appreciation is context and intent. So what do I mean by context? Right, so if you're gonna wear like henna to pump it up in Glastonbury, is that necessarily the right thing to do? I was brought up in a culture where henna is very important. It's considered an ordained, a celebration, a rite of passage for women, especially if you're going to be wearing it on your feet. That's something that's only reserved for women who are about to get married, and it's something I was very much looking forward to before the bloody pandemic delayed my wedding. Only a little bit sour about it. But hey ho. But yeah, it's a big thing, and different designs mean different things. It has meaning. Might seem a little bit odd if you're not from that culture to then just kind of wear it to a festival. If, however, you wanted to use henna because you're invited to like an Asian wedding, so you're coming to my wedding, I'd be like, yeah, go for it. Wear your mehndi. Have fun. I would wholeheartedly encourage it. Heck, Jamie and I are actually hiring somebody to come to our wedding mehndi and put henna on our guests. White, brown, green, whatever. And I'm super excited about it because I personally would really love to see my white friends experiencing that, mostly for the first time, you know, understanding the joy that it can bring and just having a laugh with it and just getting a taste of it, you know. Not the mehndi. Don't eat the mehndi. Don't eat henna. A cultural taste, you know what I mean? I think it's very cool. I like to share. I like to share experiences, and I just think it's a great opportunity for exchange. So that's kind of what I meant by context, you know? Glastonbury versus an Asian wedding. I do think there are some things that just shouldn't be used due to context as well, like headdresses, for example. Native American headdresses, they're also known as war bonnets, like functional. They became very popular at concerts and festivals, but from what I've read and understood, the meaning behind war bonnets are very powerful and impactful. Like, you can't just buy one. They're given to people, very respected people who have spent years serving a specific community, and there are huge ceremonies where it's done. So to ignore all of that and just buy one and kind of use it as you're getting drunk at a festival, I can see why that's seen as disrespectful. Especially, right, if you're like white, especially if you're a white American, because Native Americans have a whole history of oppression, being killed by the hundreds by white American people. And I get it, you were not the one that personally did the killing, but it's history, it's painful, and it would be disrespectful, it would not be a good look. I can definitely see why somebody wouldn't like that. Glastonbury actually banned headdresses from being sold at their festivals because so many people were doing it, and they realised that it was an insensitive thing to do culturally. Which again, I appreciate, I can see why, and I can also see why things like hijabs or burqas would not be used, or if they were to be worn by people not from that culture, it would be bad out of context, because like the headdress, it's not just fashion, it's not an item of clothing, it's functional clothing. It's clothing with a purpose. You commit to certain things when you wear a hijab, it's a certain way of life, it's not just fashion, it's not just a dog. A dog, it's not just for Christmas. A hijab is not just a fashion accessory. So yes, in context, when something serves a purpose beyond looking a certain way, I can see why that also would be seen as cultural appropriation and not appreciation if somebody from outside the culture was going to use it. And I also understand cultural appropriation being a thing in situations where the context might be really painful, you know, like take the swastika. That's a really powerful and very painful symbol with a lot of history. I can see entirely why somebody would be offended if that was like tattooed or worn on somebody. And in the same way, I don't think it's just reserved for like symbols and visual things. Like, I would never use the N-word, right? Because it's such a loaded word, and you know the word. History is painful and carries a lot of meaning in that context. In the same way, I would never expect someone to use the P-word, P-A-K, or the T-word, like against trans people, because you don't just culturally appropriate those things. You can't say, oh, hey, I appreciate black culture so much, I love the camaraderie between brothers, the brotherhood, so I'm just going to use the N-word. No, it doesn't work like that. And yes, reclaiming words within the community can be something that is done as a position of power. It's very controversial and probably a video on its own. But yeah, you outside of a culture cannot use those words. Nope. The context of pain is the line there, the boundary, that is pretty clear, doesn't cross into appreciation. So here's another context, Halloween, and this one's a bit more tricky for me in my mind. I don't really know where I stand. People are not costumes. I get that, I appreciate that, and I agree with that. And it really does bug me to see the fancy dress costumes in the shop that are like Mexican man, and it's just a sombrero with a very, very ridiculously oversized poncho. Or native Indian, it's just a very, very tiny dress that's brown with like some feathers that you can stick in your hair. Like, you too can pretend that reflecting a literal whole cultural group is funny, all for the cost of $14.99. Terms and conditions apply, oppression not included. Cinco de Mayo is another one. I can see why people get offended by the whole white and black sort of skull makeup, skull candy, sweet skull, I can't remember the exact term for it, but you're literally taking the existence of a group of people, the practices of a group of people who do things normally not as a costume, and sort of trivializing it and making fun out of it, and that's not okay. But here are the grey areas to me. Does that mean that wearing like a witch's costume is offensive? You know, like when little kids dress up as like witches and wizards, does that mean that them doing so is culturally appropriating like the Wiccan community, which is still a very large and active community that's around today? And another question that I have is like, what about if you're dressing as a specific character? Is that then okay? Because I'm from South Asian descent. Hello, brown, and Halloween was kind of tough for me because as all my friends every year had the various different costumes to wear, Belle, Cinderella, all the shows that had white main characters, Bilbo, Peep and Woody and all of this stuff. There's only so many times that you could dress as one Asian princess, because there was really only just one Asian princess around, and that was Princess Jasmine. And don't get me wrong, I love Princess Jasmine. I actually really love the idea of dressing as Princess Jasmine too, and I really want Jamie to be Aladdin. But when I suggest that to Jamie, or say like, oh, Polo, hi again, or say things like, oh hey, we should do that as a couple's Halloween costume, he's like, no, we can't. People will be so offended, and I don't quite get that. I get how he, as a public figure, will be worried about causing offence, but I don't understand why it would be offensive to some people. Do you? Do you? And let me explain why, because to me, I don't see that as cultural appropriation, because Jamie, as a white person, wouldn't be dressing up as an Arab man. He would be dressing up as a specific fictional character who happens to be Arab. Does that make sense? It's like me wearing a blue choli and gold belly dancing chains. I wouldn't be dressing as an Arab woman. I would be specifically dressing as Princess Jasmine, who also happens to be Arab. And if white people can't wear costumes, not outfits, I'm not talking outfits that people in society wear, but costumes of specific characters, because the characters that they're wanting to wear the costumes for aren't white, does that mean that me as a brown person can't wear costumes of anyone who's white? Like a character that's white? Because I definitely did that. I remember when I was a child, I dressed as, what's the thingy, the lady who sat on a tuffet and something for World Book Day. And the other one that I did was Alice in Wonderland, because I love the story. I love dressing up as Alice in Wonderland. I had the long hair for it, I did the little bow, I did the little pinafore dress. But now I'm thinking, was I appropriating white middle class culture by dressing as Alice in Wonderland in that way? And if the answer is no there, because I'm a brown person, therefore I'm a minority, so I get a free pass to dress as white characters, but white people don't get a free pass to dress as brown characters, then that doesn't make me feel any better, because the whole point is supposed to be like stopping segregation, and the idea that I have a rule that other people don't just makes me feel even more segregated still, you know? As I said, I really don't want to offend anyone with this. I'm very confused with where society draws that line. So my personal line would be drawn based on intent, right? Like, you don't dress up as a societal group when you wear a costume, but you can dress as a specific character. So don't come to a fancy dress person dressed as an Arab, but fair, come to a fancy dress person dressed as Princess Jasmine or Aladdin. Do not come to a fancy dress person dressed as Native American, but do come to a fancy dress person dressed as Pocahontas if you wanted to. Even if the outfit between the two may be very similar, it's the intent and what you do to it and the accessories and the way that you'll portray it, right, that makes it different, right? I feel bad for saying it, and I think it's because I've been told, or I'm thinking, that should sound offensive, but just in my mind it's not adding up as to why that's the case. So here's another question that I have that I don't have the answer to in terms of the context of all of this. I am not black, so what if, despite not being black, I wore cornrows, understanding and appreciating the cultural background and the history that it comes from? Like, if I posted a photo of myself with cornrows in my hair, in fact, I'm pretty sure, I haven't posted a photo of myself like that, but I'm pretty sure that photos are in existence. When I was younger, my mum used to put cornrows in my hair, in my sister's hair, because it's so long and thick and bushy. It was just a very nice way to make it controlled, and it also looked very pretty, and yeah, I never really thought about it. But does that mean that I was culturally appropriating black culture back then by having that in my hair? And does that mean that if I was to do it today, because I know in my mind that black people are beautiful and I understand the history of cornrows now, that if I was to do it now it would be okay because in my mind I know that it now falls under cultural appreciation instead of appropriation? I guess it would be more because I think that black people are beautiful with cornrows and I wouldn't be doing it to make it mainstream. Right? Right? And if the answer to that is yes, because it is based on intent, then if I just uploaded a photo onto Instagram, how would people know that I know? You know? Like, does this mean that we're creating a culture where people feel obligated to walk up to people and go, I see you're wearing cornrows. Do you know where they're from? And then they go, yeah. And then they go, oh, okay then. Like, that feels weird, right? Like, if I saw a white person wearing henna at a festival, does that mean that I should be going to them and saying, you do understand that what you've got on your arms and feet is a practice often used by South Asian ladies when they pass the rite of marriage? Right? You do get that. And then if that person said yes, then I'm like, oh, okay then, but if they say no, then I have to feel offended. Is that what we're saying that we require? That is the bit that I still really don't understand, and I would hate it if that was the case, because I wouldn't want people to feel offended or scared or to shy away from trying to wear a sari or putting henna on or any of the other cool South Asian things that we do, because I think it's beautiful and I'm very proud to share it, and I think it's fun to learn other cultures. Like samosas, right? I wouldn't want to deprive anybody of a samosa. They're incredible. They deserve to be shared. Or watching a Bollywood movie. I wouldn't want someone to feel scared to watch a Bollywood movie or just feel scared about sharing it. Because actually I think sharing things, especially if it's in like a positive light, is a really cool thing to do. It helps normalize and make things cool generally. Is that the problem? Is it because it then becomes cool because a white person is doing it? Because yeah, that I can see as being a problem. But then how do you stop that? Do you see what I mean? Like practically, how do you put that in place? How do you be like, oh, it's really cool, but not because I think it's cool, just because it's cool. Because brown people think it's cool too. I love talking about my culture. I love sharing my culture. I love learning about it myself too. My own culture, I mean, and other cultures. And I think the world would be a very boring place if we were prohibited from being able to do that. And I also think it would be a really weird repeat of history if we, as brown people, then started saying to white people, you can't do that because you're white. Because that's exactly what happened to brown people and people of colour in the past by white people. And that was considered a bad thing. So why would we choose to then do that again the other way round? Like that, it just doesn't make sense to me. It's not a nice thing to do. So to conclude, is there a conclusion to this? I want people to be able to appreciate culture. And I think personally that the line of not crossing over into appropriation territory, which is the bad one, and staying in the realm of appreciation, which is obviously lovely, everybody would like to be appreciated, is to not think that you're cool when other people aren't, right? And just to be willing to listen and learn to the history and the story when somebody from that culture is like, hey, you're wearing this, can I tell you about it? And also, of course, realising that if it's causing pain, just don't do it. You know, just be a decent human being. Isn't that just the lesson for life in general? Just don't be a dick. Just be a decent human being. Listen, learn, love. And Finn, my ramble, my brain fart. Was this useful? Did it help clarify anything? I'm not gonna lie, it absolutely did not help clarify anything for me at all. I'm sorry, I was really hoping that this research and making this video would give me more clarity, but it's almost brought up more questions than I had because I've thought about it a bit more. But maybe that's the point. Maybe the use is in just bringing it up as a point of discussion that we can all talk about and just recognise and appreciate that sometimes things are different and we need to respect if we're going to borrow and use. Perhaps a useful thing is just raising the questions in the first place. That's what I'll say to myself. So please, come, share in my confusion. Did you like the brain fart format though? Do you like the bed thoughts, the bed rambles? Do let me know. I'm thinking of making this a bit of a regular thing. A little series. Shaaba's brain farts. Well, I'm gonna go practice some more Spanish now. If you enjoyed this video, do give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you'd like to see more, and be sure to download Busuu. I really enjoy it. For now, be kind and have a great day. Adios!